Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has revealed how many Ukrainian soldiers have been killed fighting Russian forces, a figure well below claims from Moscow or the United States. Speaking at a forum in Kyiv, he says 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died. The president also stresses that tens of thousands of civilians have been killed in Russian-occupied territory. Let's take a listen to what Zelenskyy had to say just moments ago.
31,000 Ukrainian military personnel have died in this war. 31,000 Ukrainians, which hurts us a lot. But I can't tell you how many are wounded, because Russia will know how many people have left the battlefield. I just can't say it.
President Zelenskyy saying that 31,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died in the war with Russia. Nick Connolly joins us from Kyiv. Bring us up to date and bring that figure for us into perspective.
Well, Ben, this really is a big deal. It's the first time we've had a number like this from President Zelenskyy. We had heard from top generals back in the first year of the war. They back then spoke about 9,000 dead. So we're now significantly further on this war. This number, has to be said, is significantly lower than the estimates we've heard from the US government. There'd been unnamed US sources quoted in the New York Times last year that had spoken of about 70,000 estimated fatalities amongst the Ukrainian army, and significantly more, about over 100,000 on the Russian side, which is logical given that attack is obviously much more risky than defense. He didn't say anything about the number of casualties in terms of people wounded or, more importantly, people who are missing in action. So there is speculation here that there could be lots of people who have actually died but just haven't been recovered, their bodies haven't been recovered, so they're not in that official number.
So it's an official number according to Zelenskyy, but maybe not a realistic number. Is that what you're saying?
Or not a complete number. It's the same situation with civilian casualties. We have around 10,000 civilian casualties confirmed, but that's not including people who were killed on Russian-occupied territory whose bodies are not accessible. Human Rights Watch recently came out with a report saying that an estimated 8,000 people, that's a conservative estimate, civilians were killed in Mariupol alone. That's just based on their analysis of satellite pictures of mass graves. So I think these numbers are likely to rise significantly. We're just talking about confirmed deaths right now.
Zelenskyy sounded confident that Western support will come, especially from the US. Does he have enough ground for such confidence?
Well, he hinted at the fact that he was expecting finally the US to agree to sending long-range weapons. We've already had the UK and France sending the Scalp or Storm Shadow missiles that have made a big difference. These are cruise missiles that have been used to attack extensive targets in Crimea, for instance. And now the Americans may be sending weapons that can have a 300-kilometer range. And then the hope would be that Germany would use that as a kind of cue to send its own Taurus missiles, which have long been requested by the Ukrainian side. My colleague Carolina Chimoy asked that question, and Zelenskyy implied that he was hoping that, as with tanks, where the Americans made the first move and then the Germans followed through afterwards, the same would now be the situation with cruise missiles that have a longer range and enable Ukraine to hit targets further away.
And let's talk peace, Nick. Tell us more about this spring peace summit that Zelenskyy mentioned. We've heard that Russia could also join.
I wouldn't be too optimistic about seeing Russian presence at that summit. I think it's more important to look at this as a kind of diplomatic offer by Ukraine, especially to the global south, to countries that aren't quite so sure of their support for Ukraine, as is the case with most European or North American countries. It's about saying that Ukraine is open to peace, is not fighting for the sake of it, but that Ukraine is protecting its very existence. That's what this is about. There was a kind of comment from Zelenskyy where he basically implied that Putin would be welcome if he was willing to admit that this had been an awful mistake and basically apologize and pay compensation and basically give back all the occupied territory. I think the chances of that are pretty low for now. But this is about Ukraine engaging with the wider world and not just focusing on the kind of usual candidates in Europe and North America.
OK, so an invitation of types. DW correspondent Nick Connolly reporting from Kyiv.
Germany's Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has cut short her visit to the southern Ukrainian city of Mykolaiv after a Russian reconnaissance drone was spotted flying over her convoy. Earlier, Baerbock met with the local governor and visited the scene of a deadly Russian missile attack during the first months of the war. Her visit comes as Germany and Ukraine's other European allies try to assure Kyiv of their ongoing support, even as US backing seems to waver. At a press conference before she left, Baerbock told DW's Sonia Falnica that Germany would keep aiding Ukraine.
We know we have to do more, and this is why we signed a security guarantee for 10 years. Our support is coming up to 30 billion euros, in addition to the 50 billion euros we are just doing from the European level. So everything we are doing here, we're doing also having in mind that Ukraine is not only defending its own security, but our European peace order.
DW's Sonia Farnacker has been following the German foreign minister's visit and joins us for more. Hello, Sonia. Why did Baerbock decide to visit southern Ukraine instead of Kyiv?
Well, these were certainly very interesting choices that Baerbock made, visiting Odessa and Mykolaiv at a time when, most foreign leaders, world leaders, made a beeline to Kyiv yesterday to mark the second anniversary of the full-scale invasion. Now, her visit to the southern port city of Odessa came in the aftermath of a major drone attack, which left one person dead and three hospitalized. In a press conference yesterday in Odessa with her Ukrainian counterpart, Dmytro Kuleba, Baerbock, talked about German investments in Ukrainian ports. She said they were helping them to repair and rebuild these ports. But she also underlined Ukraine's own success in kind of really reasserting itself in the Black Sea. In recent months, of course, Ukraine has used naval drones and cruise missiles to hit deep behind Russian lines in Russian-occupied Crimea, where it's, knocked out quite a few Russian warships out of commission. It's destroyed naval depots and bridges. It's destroyed missile launching sites. And most importantly, as Baerbock pointed out, Ukraine has managed to set up an alternative grain corridor where shipments of grains are now being sent around to markets around the world. And this was in the same spirit that she visited the southern city of Mykolaiv today as well, a city also which is targeted regularly by Russia because of its grain terminals.
There are still concerns, though, that the war has stalled in favor of Russia against Ukraine. And Germany has pledged military assistance to Ukraine. But what exactly does Ukraine need from Germany?
You're right. I mean, Germany was once criticized for its sluggish military deliveries to Ukraine. If you remember, the beginning of the war literally just sent helmets to Ukrainian troops. Germany has since stepped up and has now, by some estimates, become the second biggest military backer of Ukraine after the US. But of course, there is one thing that Germany still hasn't budged on, which Ukraine has been asking for. And that is, of course, the long-range, high-precision Taurus cruise missile, which has a range of 500 kilometers and which has the capacity to destroy, infrastructure like bridges. Now, there are disagreements, of course, in the German coalition about this, but the Chancellor of Germany, Olaf Scholz, is reportedly wary of the potential escalatory impact of this powerful missile. But from Ukraine's perspective, of course, it is running critically low on ammunition. It's been forced to retreat from certain positions on the front line. It says it desperately needs these long-range weapons in order to, strike behind enemy lines, degrade Russia's infrastructure and military logistics, and buy some, much-needed time.
Right. DW's Sonia Farnacker, thank you.